All right, Shalom. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. Double honors to our apostles, our elders of Great Millstone. Peace, blessing, many salutation to you, elect Dakim, across the four winds of this earth, pushing this word in sincerity and in truth. And Shalom to you believers that are out there that do believe in the testimony of ours, which comes in the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. All right, and the only way for this to be a testimony is it has to be in the spirit of prophecy. All right, and it has to literally be sent down from Yahweh Shai. Okay, sent down from Yahweh, why Yahweh Shai. Okay, I'm the brother Sha'ar from the Great Millstone Dallas camp, coming forth with another lesson through the spirit. Lord's will, this lesson here is edifying. All right, and this lesson is going to touch upon hidden manna, the hidden manna. And I've done a few lessons in the past. I'll say a series of lessons I've done, and they'll be titled Hidden Manna. All right, and it goes into the scriptures. All right, and how we link the precepts and link the scriptures. All right, and we can find particular clues. All right, in symbolic coding. All right, in the Old Testament. All right, and we can see it being spoke of in the New Testament. All right, and the only way that you can see these particulars is if your eyes have opened. If the Lord have opened your eyes to be able to see these things. All right, it's hidden unto the world, but it's revealed unto us. Okay, it's revealed unto us. Okay, that's why the scriptures say in the book of Amos, the 3rd chapter, the Lord doeth nothing, but he revealeth his secrets unto his servants, the prophets. Okay, so within this lesson right here, within this hidden manna lesson, this is going to touch up on David and Peter. All right, because we believe in reincarnation. All right, and we've done tons of lessons, and we can prove to you, we've proven in and out through the spirit, all right, that reincarnation is biblical, it is scriptural, and it is something that not only us today, but even in our past, all right, being the Israelites, we understood the concept of reincarnation. Okay, and we believe David to be Peter. All right, we believe David to be Peter, as we believe Moses to be David, as we believe David, Moses, Peter to be Zerubbabel, henceforth. Okay, so within this lesson here, and if you are a newer listener, okay, and if what I just said to you kind of doesn't make sense to you, all right, all you really got to do is just type in Great Millstone, all right, reincarnation. Okay, and you're going to find tons of lessons that we do to prove to you going into reincarnation. All right, proving you who is through the spirit. Okay, so within this lesson here, I'm going to read you the book of Ezekiel, the 34th chapter. All right, and I'm going to go straight to the point. All right, and as I go to the point, I'm going to summarize what was written of earlier in the beginning of the chapter, hence why he had touched up on this here in verse 14. But without further ado, I'm going to read you Ezekiel 34 and 14. And Lord's word, this lesson here is edifying. All right. This is Ezekiel 34 and 14. And it says, I will feed them in a good pasture, and upon the high mountains of Israel shall their fold be. There shall they lie in a good fold, and in a fat pasture shall they feed upon the mountains. It says, I will feed my flock, and I will cause them to lie down. I will seek that which was lost, and bring them again that which was driven away, and will bind up that which was broken, and will strengthen that which was sick. But I will destroy the fat and the strong, and I will feed them with judgment. Okay, now when you go into this here, all right, he's telling you that he's going to feed his flock. Here in these latter days, he's going to feed his flock. And in the kingdom, we are going to be fed. All right, but it first starts with the word being poured unto our people. All right, unto you Israelites that believe. All right, that's how you're being fed. You are being fed with the word. All right, you're being fed with the knowledge, wisdom, understanding, with this doctrine. All right, and it's being fed unto you by pastors. That's why it's written in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 3. Matter of fact, I'm going to bust this out real quick. It's the book of Jeremiah, chapter 3, verse 15. All right, matter of fact, I started verse 14. It says, Turn, O backsliding children, saith the Lord, for I am married unto you. And I will take you one of a city and two of a family, and I will bring you to Zion. All right. And again, that starts with this knowledge. All right. That's why when it comes unto this knowledge, everybody doesn't get it. Okay. When it comes to your family members, your relatives, the bulk of us, when we first learned this knowledge, we tried to teach it to our parents, our siblings, our friends and such. And they didn't receive it because it wasn't meant for them to receive it. All right. It's only meant for you to receive it. Okay. And the Lord has certain scenarios where he'll have a sibling believe with you. All right. And even a cousin or another sibling believe. Okay. But when it comes to the bulk of your family, your relatives, your friends, they're not going to be meant to understand this knowledge. They're not going to get this doctrine. All right. It's meant for you to be brought unto this. Okay. And they're going to get it in the kingdom. Verse 15 says, and I will give you pastors according to mine heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. And that's what's taking place. All right. That's what's taking place. We were brought unto this knowledge by being taught by our apostles, our elders, and they were taught by their elders and such. Okay. And as you were brought up into this truth, okay, and when you're raised up being a prophet, okay, you're going to also pour unto the flock. All right. And the bulk of this flock consists of you believers that are believing the word of our testimony that I had mentioned earlier within this lesson. Okay. What's happening is prophecy being fulfilled. Okay. Prophecies being fulfilled. Okay. Now I'm going to jump back to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 34. And I'm going to jump down. Okay. Let me see here. I'm going to jump down to verse 23. Okay. Now, before I read this here in verse 23, one thing to remember, okay, why the Lord said he's going to feed the flock, because when you read in Ezekiel 34 and you start at the beginning of the chapter, he is giving a very firm, very harsh rebuke unto those that had scattered the flock. All right. And those that scattered the flock, especially in the time of Ezekiel, all right, were wicked priests, wicked princes, wicked rulers that didn't do what they were supposed to do. All right. Being a leader in Israel, you were supposed to be a servant first. Okay. You're supposed to be a servant first. All right. Being a ruler, you're supposed to be a servant. Okay. Matter of fact, I'm going to bring this precept out real quick. In Matthew, I believe it's in Matthew. Let's find it. Let's see here. This is Matthew chapter 20, verse 28. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister. And that word minister means to serve. All right. And it also serving goes into feeding. All right. And to give his life a ransom for many. All right. But back around that time, especially in the time of Ezekiel, that wasn't taking place. All right. Even when you look at what was transpiring around that time period, you had the Babylonians that were namely in power. All right. And under Nebuchadnezzar, all right, we still had a kingdom, but we acted as more so a vassal state under the Babylonians. And there was puppet kings that were raised up under Nebuchadnezzar to rule over Israel. Zedekiah being one of the puppet kings. You also had Jehoiakim as one as well. I believe Jeconiah was one also. Okay, but that ultimately started the complete downfall and complete ruin of Jerusalem because of the disobedience, the wickedness, all right, the snuffing the sheep, just ultimately the overall scattering of the sheep taking place due to wicked rulers. Okay. And to get further understanding on that, all you really just got to do is read Ezekiel, the 34th chapter, and start from the top. Okay. So that's why I started at Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 14, because he's going into how he was going to feed us, and he was going to send forth righteous servants, all right, righteous ministers, shepherds and pastors to feed the flock. Okay. So when you read this here, I'm going to jump down to Ezekiel 34 and 23, because I said this is going to be one of those hidden manna lessons. All right. This is Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 23. And I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, even my servant David. He shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. All right. Now, when you read this here in Ezekiel, all right, David was already long gone. David was already dead. OK, but he's giving you a future prophecy that David was going to be back. David was going to feed the sheep, because ultimately in the kingdom of heaven is going to be Yahushua, which is going to be our king, who's going to sit on the throne of his father David. But you also are going to have David. We're going to have David still ruling over us as well. And David is the elect. He is the first fruit of the 144,000. All right, if that makes sense. Out of the 144,000, David is going to be the first of the 144,000. And then you're going to have the rest of the apostles. And then you're going to have the rest of the disciples. Okay. And we're all, Lord willing, with those men, we're all going to be brought up in that fold. All right. Being under our King Yahushua and being under David in the kingdom of heaven. Okay. But at the same time, when Yahushua had came on the scene and when Yahushua had organized the church and got the church established and had his 12 men, all right, that he had poured into, and that those 12 men poured into the flock. And you can read that in Acts. You have David that was set up. You have Peter that was raised up, all right, to be the head of the church. Okay, so I'm going to continue to read this here in Ezekiel 34 and 24, and I'm going to jump to a precept. But I'm going to read verse 23 again. It says, and I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, even my servant David. He shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. All right. So it says he shall feed them. All right. Now keep that in mind. David shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. And I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David a prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken it. All right. Now, when you go into that word prince goes into a ruler. All right. Goes into a ruler, goes into, let's see here. When you go into this word prince, that word there is nashayah. All right. Nashayah. Okay. And when you go into this word prince here, it says one lifted up, a chief, a prince, a captain, a leader. Okay. Now, I mentioned earlier going into how David in the reincarnation is Peter, if you can receive it. All right. And we've done tons of lessons. All right. Starting with our apostles, elders on down. We've done tons of lessons proving this. All right. And this lesson here is going to be another lesson proving that David is without a doubt Peter. All right. Peter is David that came back in the reincarnation. All right. Because he said he was going to raise up David to be a prince, a chief, a captain, or a leader. And was not Peter the captain of the church? Was not Peter the head apostle? Was he not the leader? Okay. And the point in verse 23 said that he would feed them, right? So let's go to this here in the book of John, chapter 21. And I'm going to start at verse 14. Okay. And it says, and this is when Yahushua, after he was crucified, and this is after he resurrected. Okay. After Yahushua resurrected, he had visited his disciples 3 times and he had supped with them. Okay. He had literally supped with them, but he also poured into them as well. Okay. But this is the start of the apostleship. This is the start of the church being lifted up. Okay. This is John chapter 21, verse 14. And it says, this is now the 3rd time that Yahushua showed himself to his disciples. After that, he was risen from the dead. So when they had dined, Yahushua said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these? And he said unto him, yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. And he said unto him, feed my lambs. Let's continue. And he said unto him a 2nd time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? He said unto me, yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He said unto him, feed my sheep. Verse 17, he said unto him a 3rd time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved because he said unto him the 3rd time, lovest thou me? And he said unto him, Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee. Yahushua said unto him, feed my sheep. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou wast young, thou girdest thyself and walkest whither thou wouldest. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thine hands, and another shall gird thee and carry thee whither thou wouldest not. Okay, so the key points was going into verses 15 through 17 when Yahushua had told Peter 3 times, to feed his sheep. All right. And when you go into the threes, there's something about those threes, because when you mention something three times, and when something's pushed three times, it's meant to drill it in your head. And it's meant to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's meant to program you to a degree. I remember the Apostle Kabar did a lesson a few months ago, going into, even with this whole COVID ordeal, how they're using threes to program you and get things put into your mind, 6 feet apart, wash your hands and such. Okay. And there's a certain way that it's worded. There's a certain wording that's put to it when you put something in threes, but it's grave importance when you put threes into it. All right. Because it programs it in your mind, and it drills into your mind something that needs to be done. Okay. So Peter, was told to feed the sheep, to feed the lambs. All right. To feed the sheep 3 times, to feed the flock. Okay. And you find it ironic too, just as Yahushua had told Peter 3 times to feed the sheep, you had Peter deny Yahushua 3 times. Okay. So that also makes sense why Yahushua had to constantly put that in his head as well. Okay. But Yahushua also had Peter to be the head of the church. Notice he didn't have this conversation with John. He didn't have this conversation with Andrew. He didn't have this conversation with Bartholomew, with Libius, and so forth. But he had this conversation to Peter, because he had raised up Peter to be the head of the church. Peter was the one to be the prince, or the leader, or the captain over the church, to feed the flock. All right. That's why particular charges was given to Peter. Okay. That's why it was Peter. John was with him too, but it was Peter that had held that lame man's hand and raised him up, right in front of the gate called Beautiful. And right afterward, they walked into the temple. Okay. Now, nothing beat down and broken. No individual that was like that was supposed to go into the temple, but the charge was given unto Peter through the Spirit to raise that man up and heal that person. So they walked in there. Okay. Peter was also given the charge in Acts the 15th chapter, all right, that the uncircumcised was allowed to be in the church and to prophesy. Okay. That was a charge that was given unto Peter when you read that in Acts the 15th chapter. Okay. Because the prophecy had to be fulfilled of us being brought back that were scattered. All right. And when we were scattered among the heathen, all right, the bulk of us were uncircumcised. Okay, so that had to take place in order for us to be brought back. A lot of the uncircumcision got brought into the church, okay, because we had to be rebuilded. Okay, so these particular charges was given unto Peter, and these are examples of how Peter, all right, was supposed to feed the sheep, because he was the leader of the church. Okay, even when it comes to when the church was being organized, all right, and be set up and established. Okay, you had Peter, the head apostle, all right, and the church paid tithes and set them at the feet of the apostles, with Peter being at the top of it. Okay, and you got the example of Ananias and Sapphira that held that money back, and it was Peter. It was Peter that said you had lied to the Holy Spirit, and it was Peter that said that Ananias and Sapphira was going to be put to death for lying against the Holy Spirit. Okay, so just going into these examples in that hen and manna. All right. But when you go into this, Peter had to fulfill that of feeding the flock, because Peter is David. All right. And you see why Yahushua had to constantly tell Peter to feed the sheep, to feed the lambs, to feed the flock. OK, because when you jump back to Ezekiel chapter 34 in verse 23, it reads, "And I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, even my servant David. He shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd." Yahushua already knew that David was Peter. Yahushua knew that. Okay, that's why he stressed it to Peter. Feed the lambs, feed the sheep, feed the flock. Because it was prophesied that the servant David was going to feed them in that day. And that prophecy definitely was fulfilled with Peter. Okay, it was fulfilled with Peter. All right. And he's going to be back in the kingdom ruling. All right. He's going to be back in the kingdom ruling under Yahushua, doing the same exact thing. All right. Matter of fact, I got one more precept that I'm going to pull up. And it's going to be in the book of Matthew, the 16th chapter. All right. And this is the book of Matthew, chapter 16. And I'm going to start at verse 16. Matter of fact, I'm going to start at verse, let's see here. I'm going to start at verse 13. And it reads, when Yahushua came to the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And they said, some say thou art John the Baptist, some Elijah, some Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. And he said, and that shows you too that it was a common understanding and a common knowledge of reincarnation because Elijah was already dead around this time. Jeremiah was already dead around this time. The prophets of old were already dead. Okay. But they knew the concept of reincarnation. We knew the concept of reincarnation back in the ancient world. Okay. And that's an understanding that's being brought back unto us today. Okay. Verse 15 said, he saith unto them, but whom say ye that I am? And out of all the disciples that he asked, and they responded, check this out, verse 16. And Simon Peter answered and said, thou art a Mashiach, the Son of the living God. It was Peter that spoke up and said this and declared this. Okay. It was Peter that said that. And Yahushua answered and said unto him, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah. Okay. He didn't say, even though obviously we knew the disciples were blessed. All right. But he didn't point any of the other disciples out when he said this, but he singled out Peter, and he singled out Peter for a reason. All right. Now it says Simon here, but Peter was Simon Bar-Jonah's surname. He was surnamed Peter. Okay. And Yahushua answered and said unto him, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, which means son of Jonah. Okay. For flesh and blood hath not revealed this unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And why did he reveal that unto him? Okay. Because it was ultimately set for Peter to be the leader. Okay. Verse 18. And also Peter was the Most High's favorite. Okay. Peter was the Most High's beloved. All right. Now, John the Revelator. All right. I might have said John the Baptist by mistake on accident earlier. I think I didn't, but just in case I did, I get the names mixed up sometimes. Hey, the scriptures say a wise man slippeth with his tongue, but not with his heart. Okay. Now, John the Revelator was Yahweh's favorite, but Peter was the Most High's favorite. Okay. That's why the Most High had revealed that unto Peter and put the Spirit on Peter to make that declaration and announce that Yahushua was indeed Hamashiach, which means the anointed. Okay. But it says in verse 18, and I say unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. Upon this rock I will build my church. When you go into that word Peter, that word means rock. All right. So he's saying upon you, Peter, all right, will the church be built? And he was going to be the leader of it. All right. He was going to be the prince or the captain. All right. Because you got to think about it. Back around that time, even around this time, just as I had mentioned about the wicked rulers and princes in Israel. All right. That energy, those people were reincarnated at the same time around the time of Yahushua. All right. Where you got the wicked scribes and Pharisees. They were considered princes and rulers over Israel. OK, but just as they weren't feeding the flock back then around the time of Ezekiel, they were fulfilling that lot around the time of Yahushua, where they were not feeding the sheep, but they were considered to be princes. So Yahushua said upon Peter, that's where the church is going to be established. And he was going to be the prince and the ruler over them. OK, and it says, and the gates of hell or death shall not prevail against it. OK, because you had people that were trying to shut the mouths of the apostles, especially when you read it in Acts. All right. When Peter and John fulfilled that miracle when they all spoke in tongues. You read about it in Acts where the scribes and the Pharisees had counseled one to another, and they discussed pretty much that a notable work was done and that the Israelites were looking at the disciples to be the true leaders. OK, so they couldn't deny it. OK, so they had forced them to not teach in the name of Yahushua, but there were so many works that was being done. All right. The work was done. It was seen for itself. OK, and they couldn't do nothing against it. All right. Even the fact that 11 disciples died. All right. John the Revelator, he died later on, but 11 of the disciples were put to death. The church still grew. OK, So the gates of hell indeed didn't prevail against it. That's why it's written by Gamaliel when Gamaliel said, if this is of the Most High, it shall flourish. But if it's not of the Most High, it shall be brought to naught. And it definitely flourished because it was meant to, because the gates of hell were not going to prevail against it. Verse 19 says, and I will give thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven. All right. So he had given David the charge over the kingdom of heaven, which is Israel. Okay, which is Israel. And I'm going to show you here after I read this verse that the kingdom of heaven is synonymous for Israel. Okay, but I'm going to finish this verse up. It says, and I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Matter of fact, nope, I'm going to go into it right now because there's a point that I want to end this lesson off of. Let's see here. Let me find it. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 12. It says, and from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. And who were the violent back then? Those were those Romans who were Edomites. All right. And he said they take it by force because what? We were in captivity. Obviously, we know it's not talking about the kingdom of heaven like where the Most High dwells in Yahweh Shai with the angels, because that's a realm of perfection. Ain't no violence happening up there. That's a perfect realm and everything is in order. Even down here, everything's in the Most High's order. Everything that's happening is ordained and set up by the Most High. All right. And as I read and mentioned earlier in Ezekiel 34, as you had those wicked rulers back then that aided in the scattering of the sheep. All right. It was ultimately set up and done by the Heavenly Father so prophecy could be fulfilled and we could all be brought back. All right. And the only way that we could be brought back was through the testimony. OK, that had to happen that way. But it says, but until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. So when you read this here in Matthew, the 11th chapter, it's talking about Israel being the kingdom of heaven because we were in captivity. We were oppressed. We were being oppressed and we still are oppressed. All right. The kingdom of heaven still suffers violence to this day. All right. Even Jacob's trouble still finna come. So it's the kingdom of heaven is going to suffer more violence as the time approaches. But right when it gets to its height, that's when Yahweh Shai is going to come back and end it. OK, now I'm going to jump back to where I left off at in the book of Matthew, the 16th chapter, because it says, and I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven. All right. The keys of Israel. All right. He's going to have him the head over Israel. OK, the kingdom of heaven. And whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Meaning Peter was given the charge. He was given the charge, man. He was given the complete charge, just as David was given that charge. OK, it says, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. All right. Now, I want to go into this word keys here. And that word there in the Greek is kleis. OK, and when you go into this word keys here, it says a key. It says, since the keeper of the keys had the power to open and to shut. OK, it says metaphor in the New Testament to denote power and authority of various kinds. Power and authority. All right. And what did it say in Ezekiel, the 34th chapter? All right. That David shall be what? Their prince. And when you go into that word prince, it says a chief, a captain, a leader. OK, and that's the charge that the Lord had given Peter over the church. And when you jump down here in the Thayer's Great Lexicon, check this out. Let me see here if I can find it. It's been a minute since I went into this. OK, but it's going to say something about the keys of David. Let's find that real quick. Show all. Check this out. It says the power of David, who is a type of the Messiah, the second David, of receiving into the Messiah's kingdom and of the excluding from it. All right. So Peter had the power, all right, to include and exclude, all right, who deserves repentance and mercy. OK, hey, again, you got the example that I mentioned earlier with Ananias and Sapphira. Okay. Hey, he said that was lied against the Holy Spirit. And he foretold their death right before it happened because he had the power to do that. Okay. Just as he had the power through the Spirit to raise that person up from their crippleness, that person, that lame man that sat in the gate called Beautiful, and he had the power to bring him into the temple. Okay. And there's numerous examples to go into this to prove this, man. All right. But this is another hidden manna lesson. Okay. And I'm going to, matter of fact, I know I didn't say 3 precepts. I'm going to end it off on this, but hey, the Spirit's flowing. Only those that are meant to receive it are going to be meant to receive it. All right. Only those that have ears to hear. Okay. This is the book of Revelation 2:17. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna. All right. And hidden manna is all over these scriptures. All right. And it's in the scriptures, but only those that have eyes to see and ears to really hear it are going to be able to receive this hidden manna. Okay. So Lord's will, this lesson was edifying. I'm going to end it off on that. There's so much more that I could go into on this one, but I believe I touched up on the point. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rachakodash. Double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace, blessing, and much salutation to you elect. Shalom.